accommodate you. You can have your deer fence the way it is now, don't change it. Now, what do you want?
Thank you. I accept.
I mean, this is.
This
is what you've got. You can have your deer fence, don't touch it, leave it alone, just take it off your tree.
Just don't sell your house.
But that's the only change that you have to worry about.
I've talked to Chuck Stewart about that.
Okay.
He came over.
Okay, but you can have your deer fence. Nobody's making you take it down. What I'm looking for is, what's your problem?
Phil, I accept it.
Okay. Laurie?
Lori Brightcott, 450 Greenbrier. The problem
Go
is,
ahead.
I'll be brief. The problem is the next generation of owners and what happens to the woodlands when the fence has to be changed.
I hear you. And all I am going to do is repeat what Chuck has been saying all this time. It's a matter of individual. This regulation of woodlands or protection of woodlands or whatever you want to call it is up to the individual homeowner. It's not up to the village. The village can do all the educating it wants. You can do all the educating you want. It's not going to make people change. If they want to do something about it, they can do something about it. If they don't, they don't. And we can't force them to.
You know, I have a thought. Can I jump in for 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
Seems to be a major recurring concern of everyone who has woodland protection fences, if you will, that make you happier. And I'm wondering if we couldn't work something into an ordinance that said that if a property was sold that had been protected by a deer fence, woodland protection fence, whatever you want
It's
to
a
call
deer
it.
fence because...
Whatever you want to call it, it's the same fence, okay? An 8-foot high polypropylene mesh fence. And the person who was purchasing that property was willing to commit to not destroying any of the woodlands, not putting an addition on that house, not tearing it down, not changing it in any way, then they could keep that fence because they were committed to continuing to protect those woodlands. But if they were going to come in and take another 30% of the woodland and destroy it so that they could put an addition on it, or they wanted to build a great big house on it or whatever, at that point, that fence comes down. Because that's not someone who's committed to protecting the woodland, that's someone who's would like to keep the deer out of his lilacs and wants to put up a big house on that land. And maybe we could do something like that. I don't know. I don't know if that would work legally. One thing I ain't is a lawyer. You know that.
Well, I've got something against lilacs, apparently.
I have lilacs and my deer don't eat them. I have 2 big trees and they've never been touched by the deer, and they're not fenced.
Well, the deer know you're a friend of theirs.
Yes, I know. They do.
Oh,
Well,
Does that make any sense?
sure.
We have a concept of a non-conforming use. I'm not suggesting this is a legal non-conforming use, but you can maintain without adding the intensity or the size of a legal non-conforming use. I think what you're saying ultimately is this: if you maintain the same structure, same footprint, same size, then the mere fact that somebody with a different name or a different family moves in really doesn't alter the impact on
Or on the woodlands.
the woodland.
Would that make you feel better, those of you who are concerned?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if we couldn't do something like that. It's something that could be explored.
The question, however, is normally when you talk about non-conforming use, there is a desire to eliminate. If you feel that the present existence of those kind of fences is detrimental, then you have to make a value judgment as to whether you're going to protect the identity as it exists, or whether you want to get rid of them over a period of time. And that's really an issue.
That's the one we have to agree.
I would like to recommend that we think about taking this back to what are we trying to do for this place. Because things like we've gotten ourselves very much twisted up into a lot of little canyons here of thought in terms of, unless if they change the size of their house or do this, we're gonna do that to them, and we're getting way too, intrusive and way too complex in trying to build an ordinance. It's gonna be just absolute hell to enforce.
I agree.
And you're not gonna make anybody happy.
How
You
about,
might say that's a good ordinance, I don't think so. If everybody's unhappy, that's not so good. I think we should step back from this, because my own gut is if we voted on it right now, it'd be voted down. Whether that's
Well, I'm
neither here
like,
nor there.
actually, I'm
That's
willing
neither
to
here nor
step
there,
back
I'm just
on it,
making
too.
my own opinion, I think
Yeah.
probably would be. But what I prefer to see us do is to step back from this, think about what we're trying to actually achieve. Are we trying to protect the woodlands? Are we trying to control the deer population? Are we trying to control the aesthetics of fences? What are we really trying to do, guys?
But here's the problem is that we're trying to do all of those things.
We've been doing that for 4 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Kaplan has called for group sessions to exchange views, et cetera, with the audience, without the audience. And I think we have to move the foot forward. We're still
I think we need to
totally
be somewhere by
confused.
spring, I really do.
We're going in 11 directions and everybody's going like this. But nobody's willing to put forth,
Well, everybody's got an opinion, but nobody.
but none of the opinions match.
I said,
All we need is
Correct.
2 people.
Everybody's got an opinion, but nobody's got a solution.
That's
Linda?
right.
Hi, Linda Dunn, 2920 Orchard Road, and I'm not writing down what I'm saying. But I think, and I would suggest that the board step back, form a task force, ask who would like to be on it, come up with some compromises, look at what you've got, and go from there.
There's one thing that scares me about a task force or a committee that
volunteering?
builds duck-billed platypuses. And there's a bird built by a committee, as you know. With all due respect to everybody in the audience, you're going to have a select group that is going to form the committee because they're the only ones, as has
No.
been pointed
If
out.
there's
by
gonna be a
many
task
people
force,
that
I
are
will
here.
form it, Bill.
I'm talking while you're trying to interrupt again.
We get that note.
I think we should honestly try to get people that are not strongly involved with your group or I'm sorry, Lori's group now. I think we should get a diverse group if we're gonna talk about it.
Well, there's no
Bill,
question.
in support of that, something similar was done 10 years ago. Remember, if people who were on this board at that point in time probably recall this during the initial forays into SSAs for water.
Yeah.
And I chaired a committee that we had pros and cons sitting on a very small group. And we spent some time really hammering through the issues, really understanding them, and came out ultimately with a pretty good compromise. Everybody was kind of happy
All
with
I'm suggesting is that the group be diverse.
There's no question, if there is going to be a task force, which I think there will be, I will select the task force and I will make sure there are people on both sides of the fence. Absolutely.
Bill, would you bring the names to the board for approval?
No?
No.
Are you gonna ask for?
I mean, if they're gonna be on both sides, you know, just as
It's just gonna be
advice.
advisory.
Right.
It's advisory.
Right, okay.
So, I mean, I really feel that, we should have a task force of people on, again, both sides of the fence.
Yeah, that's right.
And I would try to be as fair as I can. And I'll certainly take volunteers. Yes, ma'am.
Could we make sure there's a gardener on that?
Absolutely.
There's what?
A gardener.
More than one.
Yes.
Joan Becker, 2750 Edgewood Lane. I'd just like to amplify on what Margie said. Why not have professionals such as biologists or ecologists or village planners or architects also on the task force, or have the task force consult with professional people?
They
Instead
can
of
do
lay
whatever they want,
people.
but I really don't want to spend any money
I
on
think
it.
we
There
should
are lots
have a
of-
mix
there
of
are-
Republicans and Democrats, because that will ensure that we have 4